Aloha and welcome to Connection to the Cosmos with your host, me, Dr. Lisa Thomson, where I have out of this world conversations with extraordinary people. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. My guest was not able to show up for the recording, and so I have decided to just share some information and perhaps some channeling from Arcturian Uluru. So first, before we get into what I might want to share about, I just want, for those of you who haven't grabbed the free 20-minute meditative journey to meet your galactic family and guides, make sure that you do that. It's on my website, mysticmanta.com or drlisajthomson.com. And if you're coming to Hawaii, specifically to the Big Island, then I would love for you to come on one of my Big Island UFO tours where you will see the night sky in a whole new way using my advanced Generation 3 military night vision goggles. And I can't wait to tell you about what I saw last week on tour. Then in October here on the Big Island, I am hosting my Connection to the Cosmos Galactic Retreat Experience. This is 5 days, so October 2nd to the 6th, 5 full days of really tapping in to your clair abilities, telepathy, remote viewing. We're going to be doing the regular night sky watches. We're going to be touring around the island, seeing some ancient alien and UFO hotspots. And really, this is a beautiful way to connect with like-minded people and to start really enhancing your connection with your galactic family and guides. It's also going to include some deep healing exercises, and all of the lodging and meals are included for the 5 days. So I have you completely taken care of. It's going to be held in Waikoloa Village, here where I live. And so if that interests you, that information is also on my website, mysticmanta.com. The deadline to sign up for that is September 1st. And all it requires to get your spot reserved is a down payment deposit of $11.11. So check that out. Now, recently, I have done a couple of travel things. And actually, full disclosure here, most of the podcast recordings that I had done prior to today's recording were recorded back in August and by the very latest, the early September time zone. Now, I had so many recordings that got me through to basically through the beginning of March. And so why I'm telling you this is that only the last 2 recordings, I had MJ Hurtubise and I had Tony Ghazi. Those were new recordings. And I share that because I'm kind of trying to decide what I'm doing moving forward here with the podcast. For some of you know, my husband, Skip, he passed away back September 15th of last year. Now, I am so deeply grateful that I had all of those recordings lined up so that I could just schedule them out. And, for those who watch the show on Facebook, I know you think that it was live, but it wasn't. It was all pre-recorded. And so since then, and why I want to share that is that, over the last 6 months, I have been doing some massive deep dive healing, processing the grief of losing my husband. And I wanted to share some of kind of the messages that have come through him to me, but also through some of my psychic medium friends. Some of them have even been on the show. And so what's interesting is that when my husband was alive, when we first met, I did not have my spiritual business. I was highly spiritual though. And so he knew that was an important part of my life. But some part through the relationship, I decided to get trained in my first modality of past life regression therapy. And I started my spiritual business. And then when we moved here to Hawaii over 3 years ago, we decided to start the UFO tour business under my spiritual business. So even though he was somewhat spiritual and he was somewhat of a believer in UFOs. He wasn't fully on board with everything that I do. And, he was highly supportive, though. I do want to say that. Like, he never tried to put me down with it. He never, did what number two did with all of my beliefs and still does, very condescending. It's very interesting. And so from the other side, what he shared, and I want to share this with you, my audience, because I think it's fascinating. So he shared that, okay, how I was kind of on the fence with all of the things with the UFOs, the ETs, the spiritual stuff that you really believe in, And he said, I now understand from this side that all of what you are doing is real. It's all true. And so why I think that's important for me to share is that, when we pass, when our energy, our physical body expires and we're in that other realm, we have a very different perspective of life and of understanding. Now, what's really interesting too is that back when I was doing my past life training at Denise Lynn's house, one of my cohorts, Devin, she was doing a mediumship reading for me. And she was like, okay, I think it's your grandma based on what she was seeing. And that made sense because that was my only past loved one that at that time that would make sense to come through. And so my grandma was highly religious, like Christian religious, and very judgmental about, all of the spiritual stuff that my mom, my aunt, and I were a part of. And so her message that Devin shared with me during that time is like, I was wrong. Keep going on your path. And so what's really interesting, so that came through with Skip again. He wasn't religious. He again understood kind of some spiritual understanding. Now, the other thing, and again, time is really interesting here, our experience here on Earth. Time in the other realm doesn't really exist. And so one of the things that Skip shared with me also very early on after he passed was that it was okay for me to be happier sooner than later, that he didn't want me to feel like I had to stay in the like grieving widow, boohooing, depressed state for a long time. And I really appreciate that because, there are other people here still alive that I think expected me to be in that state for a very long time because that's how they would operate from. Now, I'm really, really grateful of all the spiritual practices and understanding that I have throughout my life where I have an understanding, of what might happen after death and the soul contract agreement and all of that. And so I was able to process it very quickly, but I also I gave myself space. My best friend, Jen, she came from Washington State. She really was my gatekeeper, holding strong boundaries with people. And she essentially forced me to not work because normally if she wasn't here, what I would have done is thrown myself back into work and compartmentalize. Well, I didn't do that. And I am so grateful that I gave myself that space. And, I live here in Hawaii and I'm 10 minutes from the beach. And so we would almost daily go to the ocean and just putting my toes in the sand, putting my feet in the water was so healing. And, it's amazing what you can release from your body by doing that. And if you don't have the ocean nearby, salt feet baths can really work too. So I just wanted to share some of this. I'm writing my newest book right now about losing Skip and then how I am now emerging out of that and creating a whole new life for myself. So I'm going to share a little bit more about that as well. And I'm just winging it here because, my guest didn't show up. And I'm like, well, maybe I do have something to say that will resonate with some of you. Now, the other thing that Skip had shared pretty early on, and he was like, I know you're not going to want to hear this, but he said, you need romance in your life. You thrive when you have romance. You are way more creative, and you aren't meant to be alone for the rest of your life. And I will bring you a new love. And he said, you won't have to go through a bunch of losers. I will bring you your new love. And so, again, he was right. I didn't really want to hear that early on, but I think it was important that I did, because it gave me a sense of like, okay, my life hasn't ended, and there's still a lot of life left. When he passed, I was just shy of 51. And so I'm very healthy and very youthful, I feel. And so I feel like I have another good 50 years of life left at least. And so, knowing that, okay, I've lived the first half of my life, moving forward now, I have a blank slate. Like, what do I want to create? What do I want to really do in my business? Like, following my passion. So, my ETs that I channel, and again, we'll see if something wants to come through, but they are continually saying, follow your passion, be in a state of joy, be in a state of love, have fun, and play. And so, I have to take my own ET advice that I channel. And so, again, not compartmentalizing those emotions of grief, but really like understanding it deeply, and, having forgiveness, I guess, for whatever, whatever stuff might be there for me with why he chose to go out the way he did, because he did actually take himself out in a pretty dramatic way. And so, it wasn't like it was a planned thing, although new information came out through one of my other medium friends. I've talked to now maybe 6 or 7 different psychic mediums over these 6 months. And most of them have very similar information that they were sharing, which then helps validate it. And one of the things, though, was that he had been, pretty depressed for years, like even before he met me. That was something that came out, but he didn't show it on the surface. And so I think this is really important for people to know. There was nothing that any one of his friends or family or me could have done differently. It was, going to happen at some point, whether it was the day that it did or some other point. And so, check on your loved ones. But if you are in this state of mind, and one of the other things that came through was that he didn't realize how many people loved him. He could only receive the amount of love that he had for himself. And so even though, he knew I loved him, he couldn't receive that love fully because he didn't fully have the self-love. And so even with his friends, now, like, again, having that perspective from the other side, he was just like, wow, okay, I get how loved I was, how adored I was. I mean, he was the kind of guy where people just loved him because he was so nice and he was fun and, just a cheerful guy. But underneath that mask was, a lot of feelings of, sadness, depression. When we lived in Washington, we thought he had seasonal depression because it's cloudy and rainy 9 months out of the year. Summers are beautiful in Washington, but otherwise, it's a lot of rain and clouds. And so when we moved here to Hawaii, specifically to the very sunny, non-rain part of the island, we thought that that would help. And I think it did a little bit, but not enough. So it ended up not being seasonal depression. It was just a very deep, hidden kind of depression. And what's interesting is last summer we went to Peru with a group of people led by Sunny Dawn Johnston, who's one of my very good friends and mentors. And on the trip to Peru, she offered to do readings for people as we were in the group. Now, there were 29 of us on the trip, and everyone wanted a reading from Sunny. She's very talented. She's been on the show. And the only person who did not want to be read was Skip, because I think that he probably had some fear that she was going to see through him, and she would have. And looking at some of the pictures and looking into his eyes, you can read that kind of sadness. And again, he just hit it so well. But there were a lot of things going on in our life that were maybe really weighing him down. Financial, his job, like different things like that. But everything is figure outable. And so again, for those of you who might be listening or watching to this, if you are in this kind of state of mind, then really just know you do have people that really love you, that really support you. And and I know that when I've had several friends who have been in that state of mind that have shared with me that when you're in that really deep state, there isn't really anything that anyone can do or say to maybe get you out of it, but you just have to have that will to live. So anyway, so then fast forward. So, I've been working on the healing, and then my mother passed away February 20th, I believe it was. And so, I thought she was going to die back May of last year. And I spent 2 weeks in Washington trying to get all of her affairs in order. She was in the hospital for a good 2 months. And so I had to get her house cleaned out. And, it was like she wanted to let go, but there was some fear around it as well. Like maybe even though I kind of know what happens after death, but I'm maybe really not trusting it. And so, anyway, finally, after 9 months of pure misery, she released her body. And so because I had already mentally prepared for it last year, it wasn't as hard of a transition. It wasn't like a surprise. Again, I miss my mother, and I know she's there supporting me from the other side. And in fact, those 9 months, I was like, Mom, it's okay to release. And so her favorite movies and books of all time, Star Wars, and her favorite character was Yoda. And when Yoda passes, he becomes energy and becomes that supporter of Luke Skywalker. And so I'm like, Mom, be like Yoda. You can support me from the other side. And so what's been amazing over these last, again, 6 months, Skip has been supporting me from the other side. He has been bringing me people and opportunities. And now my mother, I know she's got my back. She's bringing me opportunities as well. And so, whatever you may think of happens after death, it's, we are infinite energy. This physical costume is but one of many lives. We are multi-dimensional. We exist in infinite realms of reality. And so, even though sometimes losing people can be hard for us, hard for the ego, the personality, it isn't the end of them. And there are ways to connect. They're always there to connect. And there's always the love and support. And asking for that support. It's interesting because we have a couple of friends, Skip and I, we had a couple friends here that right after they were asking him for help and he was giving it to them. And so I'm going to share a couple of those stories in the new book that I'm writing as well. So why, this podcast, it's called Connection to the Cosmos. And as for anyone who's listened or watched the shows for the last 2+ years that I've been doing this, then you know that we talk about higher dimensional reality. I have had psychic mediums on. And so I'm just sharing from my heart right now, and whatever's coming out is coming out. So what I guess I want to talk about next. So upcoming, so I am creating my new life, right? I have this blank slate in front of me. And when he passed, I really had wanted to go to Egypt. There was a trip. Mike Ricksecker, who was a guest back before Skip passed. So he is leading a trip to Egypt. And when I did the interview with him, I was super interested because he's kind of got that ancient alien background, the stargates and all of that. And so I thought, okay, that'd be a really cool tour to do. And with Skip alive, there would have been some stickiness with me going because I'm also going to Bali in June. And so now, though, I can do whatever I want, which, I appreciate because I am a Sag and I am very independent. And so anyway, so I signed up to go to Egypt. And so I will be headed to Egypt mid-April for 2 weeks to go on the trip with Mike. And so when I get back from that, I'll be really excited to share what I experience in Egypt. And what's really interesting, what's pulling me to Egypt is that I guess it was last year or the year before, I had a quantum QHHT session with someone who was new to the modality, who needed to practice. And so I volunteered. And one of the lives that came up was a Syrian life. So from the star Sirius. And it was directly related to ancient Egypt. And so for those of you who haven't heard this story, so what I experienced was being one of the genetic engineers that came to Earth to help upgrade the human body. And we were doing this from our spaceship, actually. We were sending out this sound frequency resonance that would stimulate the DNA to upgrade. So it was more of an energetic process, not necessarily tinkering. Now, we do have up to 22 different ET races in our DNA. And so getting to experience this life and seeing what was going on was pretty incredible. And what's really interesting is that this life also, we were doing an experiment on a different planet, kind of similar to Earth, but the difference was that on Earth, we had other Syrians, not me, but other Syrians that were boots on the ground, directly interacting with the humans, teaching them things like agriculture, science, medicine. And it was during the time of the building of the pyramids. And so those Syrians were teaching the humans how to do sound thought levitation to lift those megalithic structures. And so this was all part of this life that I got to witness and experience. So the experiment that we were doing was on Earth, we were directly teaching the people how to do this technology and upgrading their DNA at the same time. Now on the other planet, we were upgrading the body, but we were not on the ground teaching them anything. We were letting them organically, evolve spiritually. And what's very interesting between these two different planet experiments was that The planet where we did not directly interfere or teach, they were far more harmonious with each other. They ended up being way more like fifth dimensional, where they were in harmony, unity. They were, they shared all their resources. There was no competition. It was actually quite a beautiful thing to witness. Where here on Earth, that technology ended up ultimately leading to development of weapons and other things that then destroyed some of the civilizations. And so anyway, and we keep having that cycle. So that was a really interesting life. And so now I'm going to get to see Egypt from a human perspective. And so looking forward to that. So that's why I wanted to share about the Egypt thing. Now, then I'm going to Bali in June. So what I'm going to share about this now is that my best friend Jen and I, we've had this trip planned for probably 3 or 4 years. So our daughters are the age of graduating high school. Now, my daughter, a couple years ago, decided to drop out of high school and to get her GED. Now, as a former biology professor, there were little pieces of that where I was like, oh, is this going to be a good idea? But then I just trusted her process. I trusted that whatever her path needed to be was going to be her path. And so she did get the GED back in December. And then now she is in cosmetology school and loving it. And she's getting certified in lashes and all these other things. So she's going to have the full gamut. So she's only 17. So she will, by the time she is 18 and a half or whatever, she will have a cosmetology degree and be able to start working. That's her path for now. And she wants to be a business owner. And then Jen's daughter, Kylie, she is graduating high school, but she did running start. And so she's going to graduate high school with her AA degree from college. And so, very different routes that our daughters have taken, but so we're celebrating and we'll see what kind of, ET energy is in Bali. I've been to Bali before, but I was there more for the god and goddess energy of the Hindu gods and goddesses. And so we'll see what this trip is going to be about. So then I am going to take a trip this summer, again, back to Washington State, and looking forward to that. And then, who knows what else. But okay, the other things that I have coming up are that I am working with one of my coaches to develop a new certification program of my quantum cosmic energy healing. I might change the name of the modality just to make it a little more simple. But sometime later this year, I'm going to be offering this modality. Now, this is my modality that I created where, it's a combination of regression therapy, of light language, of sound healing, of bringing in the energy of the Arcturians, the Mantis, the Syrians, and some other stuff that, that I am going to be teaching. And so there's going to be for sure a level 1 and then a level 2 add-on after that. And so I just want to put the word out for those of you that might be interested in learning some of that kind of energy healing. It's very different than Reiki or other types of energy healing. And as part of it, I'm also going to include all the tools, everything that you need to actually do it for yourself, for other people, and for those of you that might not have a business yet. That's going to be an add-on that you can do as well, is learn how to do it as a successful business. So stay tuned for that. I don't have the dates yet because of the traveling that I'm going to be doing, but I wanted to just put a little feeler out there. And I'm really excited. So it would be a 2-day class, 10 hours over the weekend. And so I'm going to have early bird pricing on that. And then I will have VIP pricing on that as well for my long-term tribe members. So if that interests you, again, you can reach out to me through socials or my email, lisa@mysticmanta.com. And again, I'm developing exactly what it's going to look like, and then the dates are to come. Now, I think we're gonna attempt a little channeling here. I haven't done this for a while, actually, and quite honestly, I haven't vocal channeled since Skip passed away. Now, I've received information from my ET groups in other ways. I basically just get knowing downloads. Sometimes I'll hear them. But I've really been watching my energy. And so this afternoon, I'm doing this recording, and they were like, well, let's try and let's see what comes through, because I know there are a lot of people that are kind of wondering what is happening this year, right? 2024, we're shifted into the age of Aquarius, which is all about revolution. Systems are tearing down. And so that's what they really want to share. And we're just going to bring them in and I'll let them share. And we're going to bring in the Arcturians today. So just give me a moment. We are the Arcturians. We come in love and peace. Beautiful humans. We do not want you to fear what is going on your earth right now. What we want you to understand is that all timelines are available to you. There is not just the one timeline that you might be experiencing at this moment, where there are wars going on, where the politics are dividing people even more. There are timelines that exist where you are able to stay above the fear. You are able to shift into a new reality of fully living in joy and following your passion. You can experience an entirely different earth than your next door neighbor, than your family members. And you simply do this by holding your focus, holding your emotions to what it is you want to experience. The more that you can do this, the more that you can hold the vision to be truly in that state, you will automatically shift into that timeline reality. This is what you are shifting to as you call your fifth dimensional reality, shifting out of third and fourth dimensional reality to be fully in a state of fifth dimension. In fifth dimension, the polarization ceases to exist. All things are allowed without judgment. You understand that every individual is there to experience things the way that they contracted as a soul agreement. And there is no right or wrong. There is no good or bad, truly. All things are. All things give information to feed back to source. And ultimately, that is what you are here to experience. In all of your different multifaceted lives, you are more than just this one earth life, as the channel said earlier. You are multi-dimensional, And you have the ability to tap into all of these potential lives, all of the existing lives, just like this channel has done last year, bringing in the 13 galactic races. All of you have this ability. You just have to know it and trust it. Shifting your vibration, your frequency to a higher level will help heal your body. It will help keep you in that state of joy. Now, what we invite you to do is to turn off the news, turn off the media. Do not pay attention to the global politics, to even your country politics. Now, we know some of you are not going to like that because you have very strong opinions about what should be done. But what we would say to you about that is the more that you focus on the division and of your opinion being the correct one, you are going to stay divided. You are going to stay polarized in that timeline reality. If you are able to pull yourself out of the polarization, to truly understand that there is no right or wrong, that everyone who came here to Earth chose the experiences that they are going through. Now, that may be very challenging to understand. And as the channel shared with you earlier, her husband chose to take his own life. That was an experience that he agreed to. That was his exit point that he chose to go out on. Now, her mother chose to come into this life and to experience sexual abuse from the father. Now, this created a lot of trauma throughout the life of her mother, and it is something that both of them agreed to before coming into this earth life. You come in to experience all things, all sides. Now, some of you have not been to Earth very often, including this channel. Others of you have spent a lot of time on Earth, a lot of lives going back and forth on the karmic cycle wheel. It is time to complete the karmic cycle wheel, and you can simply do that by choosing, by knowing that it is complete. You no longer have to play the roles for the people in your life simply by making that choice. You have complete free will. Now, those of you who may not understand what we mean, we just ask you to contemplate that. Look at the areas in your life, the relationships that you have, the roles that you are playing, and how you are operating from polarity. We invite you to operate from neutrality. That does not mean that you cannot feel your emotions, but don't live there. Be in neutrality as often as you can, because in that neutrality, that is where manifestation happens much faster. We know we're sharing a lot of new concepts for some of you. Others are very well aware of what we are talking about. And what we would like to say to wrap this up is that all timelines exist simultaneously. You get to choose what timeline you want to be a part of. So which kind of life do you want to create? And then make it happen. We love you so very much. Thank you for allowing us to speak to you today. Okay, so a lot of information, coming through. And, really the way that you perceive your world, the way that you perceive the things going on, you really can shift your reality. You can shift your perspective. It's a choice to give yourself new information, to give yourself permission. And so hopefully what I shared today was helpful for you. Perhaps one or two little nuggets, maybe more. And I thank you for those of you who are watching or listening to this. Again, completely off the cuff, out of the blue. And thank you for letting me share from my heart. And I will see you next time on Connection to the Cosmos. Aloha.